What's good, team? Welcome to another Small James coding tutorial, where in this video we're going to be talking about my self-taught developer experience. If you're not familiar, I taught myself to code and landed a full stack remote developer job all within about the span of 6 months. And this was all done without any paid boot camps or anything, so totally free self-directed learning. So if that is something you're interested in, then stick around for this video because I'm going to be talking about everything I learned, what the progression steps for each technology that I learned and how I learned them, what order, all that kind of stuff, what the timelines for each looked like. I'll also be talking about some of the things that went well and almost more importantly, some of the things that I think didn't go well. Huge waste of time. Would definitely recommend learning from my experience and not repeating the same mistakes that I made. Then after that, I'll be talking about some of the greatest difficulties and challenges I encountered, like Imposter Syndrome, or, getting stuck in tutorial hell because, realistically, tutorials are my friend, become very dependent on them, and it's totally natural that you lose the ability to independently create stuff, so how I navigated that. And then at the end of the video, I'll just run over some of the best tips that I think it's great for people to know before they get started and for along their journey to keep them going strong and land that developer job. Or just learn to code if that's what you're interested in. Now, just quickly before we dive in, I wanted to let you know that I put together a website that's an all-in-one guide or roadmap that's based off my experience, everything I would recommend that you guys do. There's heaps of great stuff on there for learning everything you need to know about how to apply for jobs, plus all the technology, where to learn all of it. Plus, you can subscribe for the mailing list if you're interested. There's going to be heaps of great content coming out in that too. Link for the website is in the description below, so definitely check that out if you're interested in doing something similar to what I did. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, sub, hit that notification bell, and let's get into it. So at the beginning, where it all began, the genesis of my learn to code journey was having a terrible job prior to this whole experience. Really unsatisfied, so I quit that, dropped that like it was hot, and decided to teach myself to code. Now, the very first thing that I did, and I would probably recommend this to all of you guys as well, is to reach out to some people that you know who are software engineers or have any kind of computer science role. Often they'll have great resources and it's just good to have a conversation with them. They might have some excellent recommendations or connections that could just facilitate your whole journey. I did exactly that, and one person in particular, I probably talked to 4 people, gave me the best resource to learn to code ever, and this is where I started and picked up my first programming language. Free Code Camp, absolutely phenomenal resource. I did their JavaScript algorithms and data structures course. Super interactive. The way they teach the course is they break it down into all, very specific modules. For each morsel of knowledge that you should really know, each subtopic, they break it down. They give you a description of how it works, a little challenge, and then an interactive development environment where you can actually go ahead and code live, beat the challenge, solve the problem using JavaScript algorithms and data structures, and move on to the next topic. The problems are all at the perfect level where you will take a lot away from them. It's super engaging seeing yourself progress throughout their little certificate that they offer. And if you get stuck, they have great explanations on how to answer the question specifically. So that was the first thing I did. Timeline for that for me was between 2 weeks to a month. It says 300 hours on the label of the certificate. That is a fat load of khaki. It did not take me nearly that long. I would estimate approximately 3 to 4 hours per day of, dedicating myself to working through that certificate. So that for me was step 1, and I would recommend exactly the same for you, 2 to 4 weeks. Step 2 for me was learning HTML and CSS, and I did that in the exact same place. Once again, Free Code Camp, they have a certificate on responsive web design, and it covers an introduction to HTML and CSS. Once again, you can code some pages using their development environment, do some challenges, get that certificate, and the certificates are super cool because you can embed them into your LinkedIn and it just looks like you have some kind of certificate, which is better than nothing. You have some accreditation. So once again, 2 to 4 weeks for the second one. Start of my programming was probably a month, and I had JavaScript, HTML, and CSS under my belt. Now, this is an excellent starting point because 90% of the web essentially boils down to JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and so I definitely recommend you start in the same place. Plus the feeling of accomplishment of, learning JavaScript and actually knowing a programming language for me was monumental, and really just getting the ball rolling giving me some motivation, some self-confidence to just, progress and keep going. So after I'd done these two things, the next thing I moved on to was a YouTube tutorial by none other than the CSS king, Kevin Powell. He had a 2-hour YouTube tutorial on building a beginner portfolio website. It was the perfect progression because I'd kind of looked at how individual elements of HTML, CSS worked, and this portfolio just pulled it all together into a website, pretty static information, taught me how to host it live, and I could send it to my family and friends. And I was so stoked that it actually made a website for me. Once again, it was just great for giving me some encouragement, and obviously his design in the tutorial looked dope, so that was cool too. Link for that will be in the description down below. I'd recommend giving that a shot too, because a portfolio is a great way to start putting yourself forward to prospective employers. Hound them with your job applications. So at this point, I was kind of at a position where I had the audacity to think that I could start applying for jobs. That was pretty stupid and a quick learning curve for me, but it also helped me realize that, I had no credibility except for those 2 little certificates. And when you're up against a huge pool of software engineers, it's just not going to pan out well for you unless you can find a way to give yourself credibility to the employer. Without that formal education, it's just hard for them to really gain enough trust to bring you on board just from you being like, oh, I completed this little certificate, you should give me a job now. So credibility is a massive keyword to landing your first job, and this was the next phase of my journey, which was, how do I gain this credibility? So for me, the solution was projects in my portfolio. If you can have a project that you can, show to an employer and, let them see the code in your GitHub, for example, it's a huge step in them being like, oh, this person can actually walk the talk, do what we need to do. And when you apply for their job descriptions, it will be blatantly obvious that this person literally has the skills needed to do the job. So I started off, and spread myself super thin, had a whole lot of random little projects that were just maybe a bit of a waste of time. And this is probably the first learning curve. I really think you want to focus on 3 pieces of code, 3 projects that are super tidy and consistent. Ideally, across all 3 projects, you'll be able to demonstrate a wide array of skills. I'll get into more of that later and how you could potentially break that down. But for me, my first project and what I felt was the natural progression of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript was to learn React Native, not React Native. For those unfamiliar, React Native is just the mobile app development framework that allows you to develop hybrid platform code. It's very similar to React, it's just specifically for mobile development. Looking back, I was really motivated. I really wanted to build apps at the start, and so for me, that was why I went with React Native when 99% of people would just go with React for web development. I think for me it worked because, as I said, I was motivated by developing apps at that particular time, and you really want to just follow the path that you have the most motivation for, especially when you're self-taught. However, in terms of a more natural learning progression, and the one that will probably make you more employable, is just picking up React, and then if you enjoy mobile development, moving into React Native later. Either way, they teach you a lot of the same skills. They're very similar frameworks, so you pick up React one way or another. And this is a huge check on your resume for employers. React is used absolutely everywhere. Totally mind-boggling. As much as there are front-end JavaScript frameworks that are more up and coming, React is the absolute top dog, and I think it is the next essential for you to learn that I learned to add to your tool belt. So I built a mobile app. This was my first project that I actually finished that wasn't spread too thin, that I added to my portfolio. Once again, the code was on GitHub so employers could see it, and the project was live so that I could give a demonstration of how it worked to anybody. This, I think, is a requirement as well for any of you watching. Definitely your code has to be visible on GitHub so that they can see the caliber of your coding capabilities. And also, if the project is live, it shows that you have skills like deployment and hosting and all that kind of stuff, which is critical. So this whole experience probably took me about another 3 weeks to build this app and learn React Native. I followed Academy's tutorials to learn React Native. This for me was a real double-edged sword because at this point, everything I developed had been based off YouTube tutorials, and this is when I started to fall into tutorial hell. And it's also when I had the challenge of, navigating that experience, which I will get to shortly. But yeah, as I mentioned, after this 3 weeks of learning React Native, I'm probably coming up to about 2 months, 2.5 months of development time. And then it was time for me to move into a new area of interest, which was my second project, and that was an e-commerce store. So, as I mentioned, 90% of you will go down the React, then React Native route. I went React Native for my mobile app and then built an e-commerce store with React and Stripe. Now, I think this is also an excellent project, and it's a good demonstration of skill because, a majority of SaaS companies out there that could potentially, their prospective employers will incorporate Stripe to handle their billing and subscription services. So being able to add Stripe to your tool belt and, really just flex that to anybody is a great thing to have. Put it on your CV. An e-commerce store was kind of cool for me because I think that, e-commerce is absolutely huge everywhere. It's very relevant. It's a great thing. It's a cool buzzword. Would definitely recommend doing something similar. I decided to sell some t-shirts, so I actually went ahead and printed a whole lot of t-shirts. Total flop because, while I can build an e-commerce store, I have no marketing skills, so that was a swift learning curve. But nevertheless, I built an e-commerce store, stylized it myself. However, it's important to note that once again, this was just based off another YouTube tutorial, except this time I adapted. And once again, this is kind of like how I learned to navigate tutorial hell is, the keyword is adaptations. So I took the skeleton of the project that I'd done on YouTube, totally gutted all of the non-essentials, specifically the designs, some of the basic functionality and componentry, kept all the essentials like the way Stripe was integrated in and the database systems and whatnot. And then I adapted the project to my own e-commerce store, hosted that live, put it in my portfolio, and, Bob's your uncle. Tried to get my mom to buy all my t-shirts. Anyway, at this point, that was another 3 weeks or so we're probably coming up to 2.5 months, 3 months, and I had 2 projects in my portfolio that were both live. I could demonstrate the code on GitHub, really flex all my coding skills. I thought I was the king of the world. Kind of navigated tutorial hell a little bit using adaptations, keyword adaptations. I'll speak to this shortly. And then at this point, I felt confident enough to just litter the world with my job applications left, right, and center. And that experience was a real gutbuster for me because I still wasn't getting enough attention. And the solution for me was to just realize that job applications are a numbers game. At this point, I'd just really been going for front-end roles because, all my projects were front-end projects. They were just very visual, client-side, all that good stuff. I really needed to incorporate some back-end knowledge into my tool belt so that I could just, go for full stack and back-end roles as well. And for me, this started off with Node.js. Absolutely love Node.js. If you're looking for a back-end web server framework to pick up, you already know JavaScript. Look no further. Node.js and Express, beautiful. Great tutorial on my channel. Check that out if you are looking to get into that. Anyway, so I picked up Node.js, and this gave me some experience with, client-server interactions. And then after a little while, I felt confident enough to go for a full stack project. So up until this point, I'd kind of had a project that was a React Native app. I had another project that, was an e-commerce store that used Stripe for billing. It used Commerce.js, consumed that as an API inside of a React project for an e-commerce store. So, you can see the pool of technology that I can advertise growing. And then for the third project, I wanted to hit home with full stack, client-side authentication, database system, whole shebang. So it was a planner app that people could log into, authenticate, and then, create their own planners that they could access on their mobile and then on their desktop later, and all of the information is shared between them. For this, I actually didn't continue with Node.js. I felt like Node.js taught me the essentials, but I actually went with a PaaS service, so platform as a service. These are phenomenal. I went with Firebase. Firebase is just absolute game changer for, having a full stack project without having to go through a lot of the admin of hosting your backend systems, hosting a database, making sure that all of your systems are authorized and secure. There's quite a large learning curve there that you don't have to navigate if you just choose to use Firebase as an alternative. And you still get the ability to flex full stack development on your resume, which is absolutely dope. So finished this project. This one was my biggest project yet. This took me a month, and all this month I was still sending out job applications. Now, as soon as I had this project in my portfolio, I had my 3 neat projects, critical 3 main projects anymore is too much attention to spread. The attention becomes spread too thin. No one can really appreciate the thought and effort that's gone into each individual one. And the code for each of them was pinned on my GitHub, and just to show the effort that went into all of them, how the systems were configured, and to demonstrate that I could write clean code. Once again, the benefit of doing these free code camp certificates at the very start was that a lot of my code was best practice, so that was absolutely amazing. And after I submitted this project, this is when I really started to get some attention from, employers, get some responses, stuff like that. And then as soon as you're getting these interviews, that is it. Then it's just a matter of time until you find the job that fits for you. Anyway, so just to quickly summarize the end of my coding journey, learning to code probably 4 to 5 months till I was feeling pretty comfortable with full stack development. Maybe not so much the back-end stuff. I could just use Firebase services and had, a pretty good understanding of like network requests, basic CRUD functionalities, and full stack apps. And I think that's where you should really just be able to transition from learning to code to landing a job. So at this point, I was sending out probably 3 job applications per day, and all the while still trying to grow my skill toolbelt. Specifically for me, that meant learning Python. So for learning Python, since I'd done the free code camp program, I just did I think it was like a 5-hour data science tutorial on YouTube. And by the end of it, just 5 hours, it's sufficiently a close relative to JavaScript as far as programming languages go to, be able to incorporate it into your resume, say that you're cool in Python, and all of a sudden the job pool is even bigger. You can start applying for jobs that use Python as a backend service, because a lot of these Python and JavaScript backend services are very similar. They mirror each other in a lot of ways. I'd absolutely recommend that as a progression if you're not getting the attention to your responses that you need. But also, this is where I made some critical learnings. This is, a real secret nugget, and I think that at this point, you can say that you can code, you have the credibility. Now it's just about nailing your job applications. So for me in job applications, the secret was to have a cover letter that was sufficiently specific to the type of tech roles that I was going for, which was React, Node, full stack, front end, anything like that. And then I had a resume that was just very consistent. So I would, for every job application, adapt my cover letter very slightly. The resume would stay the same, and I'd pump out 3 applications per day. As for the platforms that I was applying on, there was LinkedIn, there was AngelList, and there was like the standard job board that everyone goes to in the area. Obviously, everyone is familiar with LinkedIn, but the volume of applicants was just mad. Like, the jobs I would go for would have 200 applicants. Where I had a lot of success was on the more niche job boards, such as AngelList, where it's like startups posting for new roles. And the critical thing that I did that I had a lot of positive feedback from was every time I posted a job, I didn't do this initially, this was something I tried later, and on LinkedIn, I would find someone, either the job poster for the role or someone senior inside of the tech portion of the company, and I would slide into the LinkedIn DMs with a connection request and a small note that said, "Hi, hope you're having a great week," or whatever friendly introductory message. I hope this message finds you well. And then I would say, "I just noticed that you guys are posting for a React developer. I myself am a seasoned React developer. They don't have to know that you just learned it." And then, I would just say, "I would love to connect and maybe chat more about this role if. And, sometimes they won't get back to you. Once again, if you want to really see the whole job application process, check out my roadmap website in the description. There's a really great article that I wrote about applying for jobs, has all this information. But yeah, taking the initiative to send these follow-up messages and connection requests just gave me a bunch of free interviews. I didn't have to wait for responses to come back to me with some silly, coding test or whatever. On a number of applications, I would get direct responses from the hiring managers who would be like, "Yep, absolutely. Let's have a chat." We'd set up a 20-minute call. And it's essential, it literally is a free interview. And that goes so far because you get a bit of a chance to demonstrate your skills. It's so much more personable. You become so much more than just another resume. And if they like your personality, it can be a job. It's as simple as that. I had one experience where the guy responded being like, "I love the initiative. Absolutely, let's have a call." Had a chat with him. He was like, "Yep, excellent, sick, fat, love it. Let's set up a call with the rest of the team," talk to the rest of the team, and, lo and behold, there's an offer. just from taking the initiative, none of the 100 applicants that applied for that job took the initiative to message the geezer on LinkedIn, slide into the DMs with a friendly approach, and there's your job offer. And so that is essential. You have to do that. If you're not doing that, big oopsie, rarely recommend doing that. The other thing that landed me the job that I currently have, once again, it's a numbers game. Didn't necessarily proceed with this offer because it wasn't quite the tech that I was looking to work with. For some reason I had the confidence to be a bit more patient. The thing that actually landed me the job that I have today was my communication. Now, what is communication? Communication is not how well you speak a particular language. It's the intention behind your messages. So for me, I had this great job that I was looking at, and I actually got rejected in the first instance because I applied late and they had already filled the role by the time that I was applying. However, they still took me through the first phase of the interview, so I had a chance to demonstrate my communication skills. What that looked like for me was just consistent, considerate, kind messages. They gave me an initial interview, unsure, you don't know what's going on. As soon as the interview ended, I just said, so thankful for the opportunity. Love meeting you guys. It was interesting hearing about everything that you're working on. Look forward to hearing from you. Never putting any pressure on them to proceed with you, but always showing gratitude for the opportunity to get to meet them, get to learn from them, and get to, understand more about their company and what they do. So, in this particular role that I have currently, I got a second interview with a bit more of the team. Once again, the same thing, just, kind response after the interview, following up, always sending that positive reinforcing message that's just like, no stress, loved meeting you guys, just this opportunity is excellent, lots of gratitude. And then got rejected because the role was full. Even in that rejection, and this is a huge thing, you get rejected, 90% of the applicants for these roles are just like, oh, next one, move on. I followed up. I said, no worries, totally understand, all good. Once again, so grateful for this opportunity. Week later or something like that, the guy responds to me. He's like, love the way you communicate. We're going to see if we can work something out and bring you in. That was my job. Great tech stack, phenomenal role. Couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. So thankful that, they gave me this chance because it's been an excellent team to work with. And I just couldn't be happier because of the communication skills. You reach a point where everyone can code. As I mentioned, you've displayed your credibility. You can match all these other plebeians that have done the software engineering qualifications or whatever in terms of their ability to code a full stack application. Now it's about demonstrating that you are going to fit in the team. You can communicate, you're friendly, you smile, and they want you in their team. And that's what's really going to land you the role. Make sure you send kind messages and never feel afraid of bombarding people with happy smiley face emojis because it's the positivity that the world needs. So as I mentioned, this whole discourse took about 6 months from learning to code. I'd say it was 4 months of really spending time actually learning to feel code and feel comfortable behind my keyboard. The second 2 months was just grinding job applications, and every time I got a rejection, I would improve something about my application, whether or not it was just making my portfolio look a bit tidier, changing some of the messaging, updating a GitHub README, whatever, just doing something a little bit better and improving myself until I landed these roles. And so now we're at a part of the video where I'm just quickly going to speak to the big challenges that I encountered. So the first one is tutorial hell. This is absolutely a problem for, learner developers. I myself have a coding YouTube, as you may have seen. Check out some of the videos, but don't fall into tutorial hell. Super easy fix that, it took me way too long to learn was adaptations. You start off following a tutorial, and the first tutorial that you do to build a project, don't leave it that way. Change something. Change a font size, change a text color, change a background color, do a different image, resize the image. Minor changes, very small changes, accumulate into big change, a new project. It's like the ship analogy. If you buy a ship and replace every piece of the ship, is it still the original ship? In coding, it's absolutely not. It's your own project. For even now, I will find a tutorial that I really love, write the code out for it, save it to my GitHub, and then when I do something different, I know that I don't have to completely rebuild a lot of the skeleton frameworks to make that project work. I can just go to that GitHub repository, see how they've done the auth database, full stack infrastructure, copy that in, and then gut the project, repurpose it, restyle it, change the functionalities, keep the bare bones CRUD auth database system, and move forward. Now, the caveat to that is that it's important you understand how it works, but you don't have to memorize it. And by the time you've done that 3 or 4 times, then you can just go ahead and write it whenever you want. Adaptations. On the first project, change something minor. On the 5th project, the 5th tutorial you go through, change the whole functionality. Take a to-do CRUD app and turn it into a calendar planner, whatever you like. Solution to tutorial hell right there. The second one I struggled with is Imposter Syndrome. As a developer, so many applicants, it's just mad. You will suffer a fair amount of rejection, and especially after months and months of effort, it can just be super draining and tiresome and demotivating, demoralizing, all of these, negative words. You have to be dumb enough to have unreasonable amounts of self-confidence, and also you just have to realize that a rejection is not what a rejection actually seems like. There is such a high volume of candidates nowadays that rejection is just a guarantee. You'll get a lot of it. You just have to be stupid enough to ignore all of it, have unreasonable amounts of self-confidence, and remember that it's actually these people who are the Muppets who are, missing out on the great opportunity to work with you. It's not an actual rejection, it's just that they can't see more than just a resume. They don't really get an opportunity to see who you are. It's just a rejection because they don't have the attention to detail that they really need to appreciate a candidate like yourself. The other thing I'd recommend is, a really important thing to demonstrate is you want to be the best learner. There's going to be 2 types of people. Some people will get critique or criticism and really just respond negatively. And as a junior developer, that is just a massive red flag. You want to make sure that every time you receive feedback, rejection, any kind of criticism, ideally it would be constructive. You want to take it on board, be grateful that you've had the opportunity to learn and, improve. If you can demonstrate that skill set in addition to having good communication, then, even the best developer will, not stack up against you, because as soon as you all reach a certain level of coding, any amount above doesn't really matter. You really just want to be the person that can complement that ability of coding with some good soft skills, which is, being a good learner, receptive to feedback, and an excellent communicator. But once again, rejection, you're going to get a lot of it. It's just a numbers game. You just have to send out the applications, get them done, improve a tiny bit each time, and it's just a matter of time before you will land a job. Stupid levels of self-confidence. That's what makes the world go round. You just got to join the club. Now, those are the big challenges. Glad we've capped that. Onto the tips and tricks are just absolutely essential from my point of view to give to you that you should know before you start your coding journey and for along the way. The first one is LinkedIn. Great platform. I personally don't think you need to be one of those cringe people that post their whole journey all the time. If that's you, no hard feelings. It's just not me, and I don't think it's necessary. What you do want to do is have a tidy profile that when you reach out to people, they look at you and they're like, oh, cool. And what that is a little bit of self-expression in terms of the banner. You want to have a nice and tidy profile image, and you also want to have, your desired role in your subheader, and then in your description you want your previous experience filled out. Doesn't matter if it's related to tech or not, there's always a positive takeaway in terms of like problem solving, communication, leadership, and just turn it into something that will constructively help your tech applications. If you solved any form of problem, had any kind of communication issues, led a team, that's all great. Project management, it can all be turned into a benefit. As I mentioned earlier, add your certificates from Free Codecamp if you have them. And also, LinkedIn has some skill certifications. You can get little badges for them. If you can get them, they look good because it will just prioritize you when recruiters go looking for, people who can code in HTML. The second one is GitHub, absolutely essential. I got my GitHub too late and I didn't contribute or commit to it enough. If you don't know how it works or how Git works, check out the Git crash course on my YouTube page. It's pretty quick. It should teach you what you need to know. Then set up a GitHub account. And from the minute that you've finished your Free Codecamp certificates for web design and JavaScript and you're coding your own projects in Visual Studio Code Editor, commit daily. Employers will look at your GitHub and check your activity bar as a measure of your commitment and drive to learn to code, self-improve, and all that kind of stuff. And if you have like 6 months of everyday commits, Doesn't matter if it's like a single comment added or a whole body of code, as long as there's some contribution, it's all green. That's just going to be a massive green flag for employers. So definitely get on that from day one. It's a real waste if you start halfway through, because you're missing out on showing that you've actually been working hard for twice as long as you have been. Another thing that I kind of spoke to earlier that I'm just really going to emphasize is don't spread yourself too thin. You might have 100 ideas, you might only have one. 3 is the golden number. 3 plans, and then what you do is you focus on learning to code, then you build a portfolio, then you populate that portfolio with your 3 projects. Now, these 3 projects, it's essential that each of them has a link to the live project where someone can go and check it out or try it, see that it works, and then also a link to the GitHub. And this is the 4th tip. Every project in your GitHub, specifically the pinned ones, 3, you can have up to 6, I'd recommend 3. The code needs to be immaculate, and you have to have a readme.md file for each of them that works through a logical, text-based description of what the project is. What the problem was, the solution you've engineered, challenges you encountered, why it benefits society, different technologies and learnings that you've had from it. Just everything into your README that really just shows that you can break down a problem, you've got problem-solving skills, you learn, you can tackle challenges, and you can write good code. Super important to have these extra special READMEs just so that someone doesn't have to sift through all of the code to understand what's going on. You can talk about the common features, the tech stack, all that kind of good stuff. Really good to have if you're demonstrating your projects. The next one is about cataloging information as you go along your journey. Every good resource, YouTube tutorial, maybe it's an article, it's a GitHub repository, everything like that you come across, you really just want to catalog it into, it could be your own GitHub repository if you've rewritten the code from a YouTube tutorial. It could be writing a Medium article and setting up a Medium account that just is like, oh, you learned how to set up a Python environment using the virtual env package and it was really concise. Write a guide on it, make it even more concise, and just build a library of these amazing, things that you can't quite remember, but you're going to want to access or index at some other point in the future. So good, like I have one particular modal tutorial that I love for building modals in React. I can't always remember how to do it off the top of my head because it's fairly infrequent, but I know that I can just go to my GitHub, see how it's done, remember everything that's happened in 2 seconds. And it's just great to have a catalog of all these things that I know I can lean on, even though they're not in like my instant recall. I understand how they work and I have them there when I need them. And this leads me into the last thing, which is the best way to learn and memorize code. Now, I don't think you should memorize code, but there's ways that you can go about coding that will make it stick better. And for me, the critical part is whenever you do a tutorial, comment it throughout. Write out their code, but each time like you do a function and you learn what the function does, leave a comment above the function that just speaks to it. It's tenfold a good thing to do because it means that for one, you spend more time understanding all of the different steps that happen. Like maybe I passed this reference value here for this reason. Just comments all throughout for your own benefit absolutely improves the learning process, consolidates that information in your head, and you will just be able to access it better. And the second fold reason is that it makes it a million times easier if you're coming back to it after a period of time. You don't want to have to go watch the whole 2-hour tutorial, but maybe you just want to be able to look at one particular file. You can see you've left all these nice little notes to yourself to really explain what's going on. And as you review that code to reuse it, it's just very explicit and clear what that does, and it's right there for you. Great for learning to code in terms of just making sure it's a really efficient process for you. And that's pretty much it, really. That's the whole story. 6-month turnaround, learned some front-end stuff, some back-end stuff, landed a full-stack remote developer job. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to give this a shot, that's what I've set my whole YouTube up around. So check out some of the videos. They might help you learn what you need to know. And check out the website linked in the description to see the guides written in front of you. You can just follow it step by step. If you want to send us a message, leave a comment down below. Check out the Discord. And if you're interested, have a look at the mailing list, subscribe to it. You'll see what videos are coming. Thinking about doing a course, that might be listed in there. All sorts of good information. If you've enjoyed, don't forget to like and sub. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you guys later. Peace.